You realize school never taught you about money. It's a Thursday afternoon, and you're sitting in a parking lot outside a grocery store. You didn't go in. You drove here, pulled into the spot nearest the entrance, turned off the engine, and sat there. Because somewhere between the produce aisle in your head and the number you checked in your banking app this morning, something broke. You have $214 left until Friday. You have a degree on your wall. You spent 17 years in school. 17 years of sitting in chairs, taking notes, raising your hand, memorizing things that other people decided you needed to know. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. The quadratic formula. The causes of the First World War. The themes of The Great Gatsby. 17 years of curriculum designed by people who sat in rooms and agreed on what a functioning adult should understand. Not one of them put compound interest on the list. Not one of them explained what a credit score actually is and why it follows you like a shadow for the rest of your life. Not one of them showed you what happens when you carry a balance on a credit card for 12 months. Not one of them told you the difference between an asset and a liability in language a teenager could use. Not one of them explained taxes in a way that meant anything before you got your first paycheck and stared at the deductions line like it was written in a foreign language. You learned to solve for X. Nobody taught you to solve for broke. You sit in the car a little longer. The grocery store doors keep sliding open and closed for other people. You think about the version of you that walked across a stage in a cap and gown. The version that believed the hard part was over. That the diploma was the key and now you just had to find the door. You found the door. The door costs $1,650 a month. That's the rent. That's before the utilities, the car, the insurance, the student loan, the credit card you opened at 22 because someone at a campus table offered you a free t-shirt, the subscriptions you signed up for and forgot about, the phone bill, the groceries you haven't bought yet because you're still sitting in the parking lot doing math on your fingers. This is the education nobody gave you.
You were 6 years old when you started school. 6 years old. You didn't know anything about the world. You knew your name, your address, maybe your phone number, if your parents drilled it into you. You knew how to tie your shoes if you were lucky. You were a blank page, and for the next 12 years, a system was going to write on you. That system had a plan. Reading, writing, arithmetic, then harder versions of all three, then science, then history, then literature, then the options split, electives, AP classes, honors tracks, vocational paths. The system had thought about this. There were meetings, there were standards, there were people whose entire job was to decide what went into your head for the better part of 2 decades. They chose everything except how money works. Think about what they found time for. You spent an entire semester on the War of 1812. You spent weeks on the symbolism of green light in a novel about rich people in the 1920s. You took a class where you identified the parts of a flower and labeled them on a diagram you never thought about again. You learned to conjugate verbs in a language you don't speak anymore. You dissected things. You memorized the periodic table. You calculated the velocity of objects falling from theoretical buildings. You did not learn what a W-4 form is. You did not learn what happens to money when it sits in a savings account for 30 years versus when it sits in an index fund. You did not learn the actual cost of a car loan. You did not learn what a deductible is or why it matters or how it connects to the premium you pay every month. You did not learn the difference between good debt and debt that will hollow you out slowly over years. You were never taught that your credit score affects the interest rate on your mortgage, which means it affects the total price of every house you'll ever buy by tens of thousands of dollars. You were never taught that paying the minimum on a credit card is a mechanism specifically designed to extract money from you for as long as possible. You were never taught that the thing called an emergency fund is not a luxury. It is the difference between a bad week and a bad year. They had 12 years with you. They found time for the flower parts.
You remember the first time you got paid. You were 16.
The job was bagging groceries at a store that smelled like the inside of a refrigerator. You worked 4 shifts that week, 2 of them on school nights, and you were tired in a way that school never made you tired, because school never asked anything from your body, only from your ability to sit still and appear to pay attention. The check came. You looked at the number. The hours multiplied by the wage. You had done that math in your head 100 times during the shifts. You had already spent the money in your imagination. New shoes, a game you wanted, cash for things you didn't need but wanted with the specific hunger of a teenager who has never had their own money. Then you looked at the check again. The number was wrong. Not wrong like someone made a mistake. Wrong like the world had rules you didn't know about. There were deductions. Federal tax, state tax, FICA, whatever that was. Social Security, which someone at some point was supposed to explain to you was a tax you pay now so that when you're old, there's a system that helps you. Theoretically, if it still exists by the time you get there. Medicare. A dollar amount taken from your pay for a healthcare system you wouldn't use for 50 years. You stood there in the break room holding the check. Nobody explained this. Nobody told you that every dollar you earn in this country becomes a smaller number before it reaches you. Nobody walked you through where those deductions go, why they exist, how to make sure the withholding is calibrated correctly so you don't owe the government a surprise bill in April. Nobody taught you what a tax refund actually means, that it's not a gift, it's your own money that you overpaid, and they're giving back without interest. You were 16. You knew the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You did not know what FICA was. The credit card came at 22. You know this story. The table outside the campus building, the sign that said free, and the offer that seemed simple. A credit card. A small limit to start. Just to build credit, the person said. You need credit to get credit. That's how the system works. So you signed up. And for a while it was fine. You used it responsibly, which is what you told yourself. Responsibly meant you used it and you paid the minimum. The minimum payment. The number at the bottom of the statement that was small enough to feel manageable. Not the full balance, the minimum. Because the full balance was more than you had, and you were young, and you figured you'd deal with it later. Nobody had taught you what the minimum payment was designed to do. It was designed to make the balance permanent. If you carry a $3,000 balance on a credit card at 22% interest and you pay only the minimum each month, it takes over 15 years to pay off. By the time you're done, you've paid back more than double what you borrowed. The credit card company didn't offer you credit because they were generous. They offered you credit because they had run the math on how long it would take to pay it back, and they knew it was profitable. They were not confused about what was happening. You were. Because nobody taught you. Nobody sat you down at 17 and said, here is a product that is being marketed to you. Here is how it makes money for the company offering it. Here is what you need to understand before you sign anything. Here is the calculation you should run before you carry a balance. Here is the thing called APR. And here is how to use it to compare products. Here is the compound interest formula, which you learned in algebra class for reasons no one explained. And here is a real situation where it applies to your actual life. They gave you the formula. They didn't give you the application. You learned the algebra in a classroom. The credit card company taught you the rest. Your parents tried. You want to be fair to your parents. Your parents grew up in a different version of the same silence. What they knew about money, they learned from watching what their parents did, which was learned from watching what their parents did, which was a set of behaviors built for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Save what's left over. Work a job with a pension. Pay cash when you can. Don't talk about money at the table. Don't ask what things cost. Don't make the people around you uncomfortable with numbers. Don't talk about money. That was the inheritance. Not malice, not negligence, a cultural silence that got handed down across generations like a piece of furniture nobody wanted, but nobody threw out. Money is private. Money is uncomfortable. Money talk is rude. Money is something that either works out or it doesn't. And you don't ask too many questions, because asking too many questions makes you seem like you care too much about something you're not supposed to care too much about. So you didn't ask, and nobody told you. And the system that had 12 years with you decided the War of 1812 was more important.
You are sitting in a car in a grocery store parking lot, and you are thinking about the years. The years you spent paying the minimum on something you barely remember buying. The year you didn't open the mail for 3 months because the mail had become a physical object that represented decisions you hadn't made and bills you hadn't figured out and numbers you were afraid to look at directly. The year your car needed a repair and you didn't have the money and you didn't have the credit and you borrowed from someone and you paid it back slowly in ways that were awkward and left a residue in the friendship. The years you didn't negotiate your salary because nobody told you that the first offer is almost never the final offer and that the discomfort of asking for more lasts one conversation, but accepting less lasts every single year you hold that job, multiplied by every raise that is calculated as a percentage of a number that was already too small. The years you put nothing away because there was nothing left to put away, and you didn't understand yet that there is always nothing left to put away if you spend first and save the remainder. The only way saving works is if you treat it like a bill, not a leftover. Pay yourself first, in the language of people who figured this out eventually. That language doesn't get taught. You learn it the same way you learned everything else about money, from a mistake or from someone who got lucky enough to figure it out and decided to tell you about it at 34 in a grocery store parking lot video you watched at 1 in the morning.
Let's do the actual math now. The math they owed you in 9th grade. You are earning $55,000 a year. That's roughly the median individual income in this country. Not a failure, not a triumph, the middle of the middle. The number that most of the country is near. After federal and state taxes, Social Security, and Medicare, you take home somewhere around $43,000. Call it $3,580 a month. Your rent is $1,400. You're not in a major city. You're not living extravagantly. You have a 1-bedroom in a mid-sized city where the parking lot outside the grocery store looks exactly like this one. That's $1,400 gone. You have $2,180 left. Car payment, $320. Insurance, $180. Gas, $160. That's $660. You have $1,520 left. Groceries, $400. Utilities, $150. Phone, $85. Internet, $65. That's $700. You have $820 left. Student loan minimum payment, $280. Credit card minimum payment, $95. That's $375. You have $445 left. Subscriptions you actually use and a few you forgot to cancel, $70. Laundry, toiletries, haircut, the small invisible costs of existing in a body, $120. That's $190. You have $255 left. $255 a month. For everything else. For the unexpected. For savings. For the emergency that doesn't care that you only have $255. For the car repair, the dental bill, the flight home when something happens, the friend's wedding 4 states away, the birthday, the thing that breaks in the apartment, the doctor's visit, the copay, the prescription. $255 a month. That's not a budget problem. That's a structural problem. That's a problem that was built into the architecture of a life that nobody designed with you in mind. And nobody sat you down at 15 and showed you this math.
Here is the thing about debt that they also owed you. Not all debt is the same. This sounds obvious. It isn't obvious until someone explains it. Because when you're young and broke and scared, debt is debt is debt. A single dark category that lives in the part of your brain where shame lives. And you don't want to look at it directly, so you don't look at it. And because you don't look at it, you can't sort it. And because you can't sort it, you can't deal with it strategically.
There is debt that builds something, a mortgage on a home that appreciates, a loan for education in a field that increases your earning capacity. Theoretically, in theory. The theory does not always survive contact with the actual market, but the principle holds. A loan to start a business that generates more than it costs. Debt is a tool. Debt that you use and discard. Debt that dies in the service of something larger. And there is debt that only extracts. The credit card balance at 22%, the payday loan, the buy now, pay later purchase for something that will be worth nothing by the time you finish paying for it, the car loan on a car that loses 20% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot. This is not a tool. This is a drain. This is money leaving your life every month to service a thing that is not growing, not building, not compounding in your favor. The difference between these two kinds of debt is not complicated, but nobody taught you the framework. Nobody said, before you borrow, ask what this debt is doing. Is it building or is it extracting? Is it a tool or is it a trap? Ask the question before you sign. Ask the question out loud in a room with someone you trust, because the question feels embarrassing to ask, and that embarrassment is manufactured. The embarrassment was put there on purpose to stop you from asking.
The other thing they never taught you is the difference between what something costs and what something costs. Your car costs $320 a month. That's not what your car costs. Your car costs $320 plus $180 insurance, plus $160 in gas, plus the depreciation you're not tracking, plus the maintenance that will come due, plus the registration, plus the tax, plus the parking, plus the tickets, plus the oil changes, plus the tires. Your car costs closer to $900 a month, maybe more. And you've been thinking of it as $320 because that's the only number that shows up as a line item on your mental budget. Your apartment costs $1,400 a month. That's not what your apartment costs. Your apartment costs $1,400 plus utilities, plus renter's insurance, plus the security deposit that's sitting in a bank earning your landlord interest while you can't access it, plus the things that break that you replace because you don't want to bother the landlord, plus the furniture you bought to fill it, plus the parking space that's extra, plus the storage unit you rented because the apartment is too small, plus the distance from work that costs you time, which costs you money in ways you can't put on a spreadsheet. The number on the price tag is designed to be smaller than the actual cost. This is not an accident. Every financing offer, every lease, every subscription, every payment plan is built on the same principle. Show the monthly number, not the total number. Because $32 a month sounds fine. $384 a year for something you use twice sounds different. $1,152 over 3 years for something that stopped being exciting 6 months in sounds like exactly what it is, a mistake with a monthly payment plan attached. They never taught you to look past the monthly number. Every advertiser in the country is grateful for that gap in your education.
Here is the thing about your job. You have a job. The job pays $55,000. The job takes 40 hours a week, and that's if everything goes well. And usually things don't go perfectly, so call it 45, sometimes 50 during the stretches when someone is out or there's a project deadline or you're trying to prove something to someone who will forget you did it by next quarter. You have a job. The job controls your Monday through Friday and most of your Sunday evenings when the anxiety starts to build and you're already thinking about the week ahead. The job controls where you live because you have to be within commutable distance. The job controls what you eat during the day and when you eat it. The job controls when you can see a doctor because the doctor is only available during hours the job has already claimed. You did not learn this in school. You did not learn that the salary number has a shadow number attached to it, which is the number of hours of your life that salary purchases each year. You earn $55,000. The job costs you roughly 2,400 hours a year, including commute. That's $22.99 an hour, before taxes. After taxes, closer to $17 an hour, for 2,400 hours of your year. Nobody put it that way in the guidance counselor's office. The guidance counselor had a brochure. The brochure had starting salaries. The brochure did not have a column that said, and here is what this number looks like per hour of your life at a realistic accounting of how many hours the job actually takes. If they had shown you that column, you would have read it differently. If they had taught you to evaluate an offer not just by the annual number, but by the hourly cost of your actual life, you would have negotiated differently. You would have asked different questions in the interview. You would have read the benefits package more carefully, because benefits are not a bonus, they are compensation, and their dollar value is real and matters and belongs in the calculation. But the column wasn't in the brochure, so you took the offer.
You're still in the parking lot. It's getting dark earlier now. The fluorescent lights above the lot are starting to matter. People are coming and going, carrying bags, putting things in trunks. You think about the version of you at 15, sitting in whatever class it was. Economics, maybe, if your school had one, which many didn't. And if they did, it was about supply and demand curves and the history of the Federal Reserve, not about your actual financial life. The 15-year-old you who was absorbing everything the system decided to put in your head. What if someone had walked in? What if someone had walked in and said, I'm going to take 40 minutes of your life today, and I'm going to give you something that will affect every single decision you make for the next 60 years. Not theoretically, not as a concept. They would have said this: every dollar you spend is a choice between now and later. Not a moral choice, a mathematical one. The dollar you spend today is not just that dollar. It is that dollar plus all the growth that dollar would have produced between now and when you need it. Spending is not neutral. Spending has a cost that doesn't appear on the receipt. The cost is the future value of that dollar, and you have to decide whether what you're buying is worth that cost. They would have said this: debt is time travel. When you borrow money, you are borrowing from your future self, who will have to pay it back plus interest. Every debt is a letter to a future version of you that says, I needed something now, and I need you responsible for it. Before you borrow, ask whether your future self will be grateful or resentful. Ask whether the thing you're buying is worth the burden you are placing on a version of yourself who is going to have their own problems. They would have said this: your income is not your wealth. Your wealth is what remains when you subtract what you owe and what you spend. Two people can have the same income and end up in completely different places in 20 years because of what they kept. The number on the paycheck is the starting line, not the destination. They would have said this: the emergency fund is not a savings account. It is a firewall between your life and the financial system that is waiting for you to be vulnerable. Without it, every unexpected expense becomes debt. Every piece of debt costs more than the original expense. Every crisis becomes a spiral. With it, the bad thing happens and then it stops. 3 months of expenses. That's the number. It doesn't earn much. It earns something more important than interest. It earns stability. 40 minutes. That's all it would have taken. Here is what you're going to do now. Not tomorrow, not when things settle down, not after the next paycheck. Now. Tonight. In the parking lot if you have to. You're going to write down the number. Not the aspirational number, not the number from the YouTube video, not the number someone told you over dinner. Your number. What comes in each month after taxes? That number, at the top of the page. Then below it, every dollar that leaves. Every one. The obvious ones and the invisible ones. The subscriptions that leave quietly on dates you've stopped noticing. The things you put on the card and forgot. The cash that disappears and gets filed under miscellaneous because you didn't want to look at what it actually was. All of it. On the page. This is not a punishment. This is the class you should have had at 15. The one nobody gave you. You're giving it to yourself now. In a grocery store parking lot. At an age where you've already paid tuition for your ignorance in ways that hurt. The number at the bottom, what's left, is going to be something. It might be more than you expected. It might be less. It might be a negative number. And if it is, you need to know that before it knows you. Before it becomes a problem that has its own momentum. You need to see it.
The system that had 12 years with you decided this wasn't important enough to show you. That was their choice. You don't get those years back. You can't redesign the curriculum or go back to 9th grade or retroactively attend the class that should have existed. What you can do is give yourself the education right now that you should have received then. One piece at a time. Compound interest. Credit. The true cost of debt. The difference between income and wealth. The emergency fund, salary negotiation, benefits as compensation. The real cost of your car and your apartment. The monthly payment trick. The difference between spending first and saving first. None of this is complicated.
Somewhere, there is a 15-year-old sitting in a chair absorbing whatever the system has decided they need to know. They will graduate, they will get a job, they will get a credit card at a table outside a campus building for a free t-shirt. They will stare at their first paycheck, trying to understand the deductions. They will carry a balance. They will not negotiate their first salary. They will spend first and save what's left over, which will be nothing, which they will call a budget problem when it is actually a sequence problem. They will sit in a parking lot in their 30s doing math they should have learned at 15, unless someone tells them first. The education is available now. It's in books, it's in videos, it's in spreadsheets on a laptop at midnight while the coffee goes cold. It's in the math you can do right now on the back of a receipt in a parking lot. It has always been available. It was just never required. The system had 12 years. It chose what to put in those years. You get to choose what comes next. Go buy your groceries. Then go open the spreadsheet. The number is waiting for you. It always was.